Overplan, underplan, is world building that critical?
I don't think so. Hey, welcome to Dyerden. I'm Brad Wolf, and I'm here with Mike, and we are talking about myths in Dungeons and Dragons. This is the last of our myths, and this is world building is critical. You can't be a DM without knowing all this stuff about the world. And I think this scares the hell out of a lot of people who would otherwise be happy to DM.
Yeah, I've recently had this this feeling myself with my first campaign that I'm running, and I've quickly realized just and we've talked about this in a previous one before of just like recycling ideas, having just like general things laid out, and then reusing them in different areas if they don't go to those areas. So you don't have to overplan, have 12 different cities. Have one, and once they go to somewhere, it's like have that kind of be the general layout and flavor it accordingly. And if they decide they're going to a different one, like just prep that for the next one. And a world building is things that, as far as I'm concerned now, it happens as it goes. And if you see them going into the direction of it, kind of like what's the Jim Carrey fake world show or movie, Truman Show. Kind of like that, where it's like things are happening as the group is going towards somewhere, right? It's not an entire world off the bat. It grows as your characters explore. As long as they don't have the teleport spell or the airship, you don't have to overplan. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. They always, they say, well, we want to go to that place that you mentioned, in the last adventure or last session, and you're like, okay, well then it's going to take you 6 days of travel to get there, and so you can, you role play you play out a few random encounters to represent this travel, and then you have next session where they actually get there, and then between now and next session, you can figure out what's in that place.
Yeah, and if they decide, you know what, we don't want to go there, and they turn around and go somewhere else, well, then you have a place to prop up somewhere else if they explore somewhere else, right? And then just,
right.
Oh, they were going to a ancient tomb in the desert, but now they're going to somewhere in a mossy swamp forest. Oh, cool. Reflavor all the things from like stony and, tombs to little caves made by creatures and, different monsters and stuff like that. I mean, just you have the layout. You can just move it. You are the overlord. Just
right. So like if you have a dungeon that's full of goblinoids, right, and you planned it out like you said, of like they're living in this mountainous region, this rugged region, and the hobgoblins are in charge, and it's this strict militant organization of goblinoids.
Yeah.
And they don't go to the mountains, they go to the swamp. Well, you can still use all that same stuff. It's just, all you have to do is flip it and say the bugbears are in charge of this goblinoid society.
Yeah.
And they're chaotic and they live in the swamps, and, it's more bugberry than it is hobgoblin-y.
Yeah.
Right. And that's the only change you have to make. All the stuff that you laid out is still there. Right.
The only thing that I would say that is somewhat critical in world building is like the end goal or whatever it is in your mind of the story, having the big bad evil, and then maybe some factions here and there that you pepper in. And if they decide to pursue those factions, then you kind of build onto them and maybe name some characters and have an NPC here and there to make it feel more fleshed out. But you don't have to have 20 NPCs off the bat for a faction that's mentioned in a note, just in case, right? So, yeah, that's kind of what I did. Is like I had this thing where it's like there's a rift of magic at the center of each school in this world. But I doubt you ever played this game, but there's a game called Fallout New Vegas, where it's like this power struggle, and there's different factions that kind of have different agendas. There's a faction that wants to like imprison the central New Vegas part and just have it under like super military control. There's another faction that wants to take it over and be like the evil, people use it for nefarious things and old world stuff. There's a a faction that just wants to spread it out to the world so everyone gets it equally, and then there's another faction that just wants to destroy it, right? And I kind of peppered these factions in of like, you know, little notes of like other places and stuff like that of people that want these things, but I don't have any NPCs for them until they're like going towards that area or decide like, you know what, I think we need to check this out. And I'll be like, cool, right. Travel time, and then next session I'll have a couple names or a city or whatever. And if they don't go there, oh look, it's now this other city that you went to instead, you know. So
yeah. So world building, I don't think is nearly as critical as a lot of people think it is. And you know, I think we've just given some good examples of how you can, you know, the idea of like kind of concentric rings you build out around your players. The other thing is not every campaign has to be the epic quest, right? Not every game of Dungeons and Dragons needs to be like Dragonlance or Lord of the Rings. Like you don't have to save the. This isn't an anime where you have to save the world in every one.
Yeah,
you know. So there's different ways to play. You know, we recently talked about the idea of, you know, just having consecutive low-level games, right? So you can get away from the epic quest with just local adventures.
Yeah.
Right. So with a local adventure, you need like one town, one dungeon, and maybe a faction or three, right? Like you don't need a whole lot. And with that, you can easily get up to, you know, 4th or 5th level, right? So if you're just playing like low-level local adventures where the main bad guy is a hobgoblin captain or the main bad guy is an orc chieftain, right?
More small-scale, realistic things. The world isn't ending all the time, right?
Right. Or you could even do like a Witcher-style local adventure where like there's something in those woods and there's something in the mountains and there's something in the swamp, right? And you have like one mid-level monster that lives in the different locations, and you know it becomes kind of like a Witcher style hunt to hunt down whatever it is that's eating people in the swamp, and you hunt down whatever it is that's you know driving the animals out of the forest, right?
Yeah. To go with the epic quest thing, it's interesting because like if all the players are connected to that story and the reason of why the DM has the big bad evil or the scenario that's happening, and then everyone's like in on it and like they're like, oh, this is awesome, we're going for this and we want to pursue this, and the characters themselves also have a stake in it. Cool. But that's also drawn out for so long, and then you're also following, you know, a storyline that the DM loosely has planned out already, and it's their story or whatever. Whereas one of my more memorable plays was, and this was a very talented DM that got me started with D&D, who was also just very improv based. One of my most memorable one shots that we played had no point at all. It was just, I told him like, yeah, I just want a character who is just a normal guy, a nice sweater vest, and owns a bar. I literally want to be an NPC. And so he based that. He was just like, cool. And like we played the game like 20 minutes later, and the rest of the party, it was an adventure group that came in just for a drink. And then my waiter was like, hey, we're out of corn for this shift. Where did it all go? And then that was the whole session, was trying to find out what happened to the corn. And it was like, there was some beast downstairs that was being hidden by my son, and like he was feeding him corn. And it was like this whole crazy, stupid adventure that was a one shot, but it was driven by us, the players, just like going out and doing something that was such a small thing, simple, but like we made it complicated in a fun way. As opposed to like, yes, you are all going into the edge of the world, into the 5th dimension to save from Knoxville, the Lorehold or cast. I don't know. Like, I'm just trying to throw out random like stupid words of just like an epic quest. You're like, wait, what? What am I doing? What is this for? Oh, you know.
Right. Yeah. So. You know, like you are the Fellowship and you have to destroy the One Ring.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
You know?
Who are these guys? I just met them. Like, yeah. It's. Yeah. I feel like the world building is like based off of just your players is way more fun for the players. And also, it's fun to watch as a DM when it happens,
Right.
as opposed to having everything planned out and having nothing be story wise injected from the group of players themselves.
Yeah. We are impressed by J.R.R. Tolkien and George R.R. Martin because they are great world builders, right? They are
Hmm.
very thorough and complete world builders, but they're the exception, not the rule.
Hmm.
You're not going to be able to be those guys. Um, not as not anywhere close when you're a brand new DM,
Yeah.
right? Um, I've been DMing for a long time, and I've run a few Epic Quest campaigns where we actually finished it, and most of them take over a year,
Hmm.
and um, and they're few and far between because a lot of campaigns people drop out because of real life,
Hmm.
right? So don't put a lot of pressure on yourself to be, you know, the Epic Quest DM.
Or also
Someday,
on the more harrowing side, sometimes campaigns fully end because no one can end up meeting up again. So if you put in, hundreds of hours of planning or whatever, maybe not hundreds, but and then all of a sudden it's gone, it's like, well, you can recycle it for later, but if it doesn't like quite fit the style of game, like maybe this was like a cyberpunk thing that you were doing and now it's more of a classic sword and board later on, like yeah, you might have overplanned and had it not come to fruition, and that would feel awful.
yeah. So local adventures are a great alternative, and so it also gives other people a chance to DM if you're just kind of rotating through everybody playing like you know levels 1 through 5 or levels 3 through 10 or whatever. You're not trying to do these great epic campaigns. Another DM style of play that gets you away from a lot of world building is the episodic campaign, right? So like think about like like Star Trek, right? The characters have a ship, and that the most world building is like what can the ship do, and then each episode is a new planet, right? So if you're running a Dungeons and Dragons game like that, right?
Mhm,
The players have some means of travel, and they come to a new place, and you have that place prepared, right? Um, and then like we said, you just do a travel montage, and then next time, right? You have a
mhm,
new episode. There's a new, you can also like episodic campaigns. You can also do kind of monster of the week, and that goes back to kind of the Witcher style. Like each game session is a different monster you're trying to hunt down, right?
right,
So that way, the world building is very player focused because it's very much about the organization they work for, or the ship that they travel on, or the band that they're in, or the carnival that they're a part of, and that world hops based on whatever the next thing your DM's in the mood for running.
mhm,
You know, um, So especially if the players are not the captain of the ship, right, or the ringleader of the carnival, you know, you can have the carnival. Well, the carnival shows up here, and now here's the adventure that goes with this location.
right,
So like, so like every other session, you can kind of plan an episode, and it takes 2 or 3 sessions to play out, and then you plan the next one, right? You don't have to plan the whole thing out. Um, the West Marches style is a is an old style of running the campaign that's kind of drop in.
mhm,
So the idea is that a you have like a point of light. That's another name for this is the point of light campaigns, right? So you have a city, and inside the city is an adventurers guild, and whoever shows up to play that week, um, goes out of the adventuring guild into the wilderness, does the thing, and then they come back, right? So it's kind of short. It's like a series of one shots that are kind of built out of a hub, right? So that's the West Marches style is a way to kind of do an episodic campaign that's very location based.
mhm,
So it's called Point of Light because the city is always safe. As long as your characters get back to the city, they're fine, right?
Right.
So the goal is to leave the city, go do a thing, and get back to the city with each adventure, like with each session. So that's
So
a different.
I mean, I'm going to relate that to like Attack on Titan style.
Yeah, that's a great example.
And hex crawl, I've seen that before. I haven't done it before. That's the travel grid map. Is that what I'm thinking of, or something different?
Right, exactly.
Okay.
And there's all sorts of hex crawl, especially we talked about the OSR. There's a lot of good hex crawl games that are out there in the OSR. So what you do is you start with, again, kind of a local adventure that takes place in one hex on this larger map, and then as the players explore, you develop the surrounding hexes of the map. So your world grows.
Gotcha.
As the players move from one hex to the next. And you can do a lot of this sort of random tables. There's a lot of good random table options out there that allow you to do a hex crawl. So like if the players go to a hex that you have no idea what's there, you're like, hey, everybody take a break, grab a snack, go to the bathroom, and you're just back there like rolling like crazy on these random tables and like, okay, now I know what's in this hex.
Gotcha.
So there's a lot of different ways to play D&D that don't involve, being, Tolkien, where you come up with your own languages and you have this whole map of this whole continent and all these different factions.
And the players translating sheets and
yeah, you don't need all that.
Yeah.
And you can and I'll tell you, it's more fun to develop that over time as you play.
Yeah.
And actually have different player groups build your world over time, than it is to try to plan it all out from the beginning.
Mental capacity, for a game that you're playing maybe once a week for up to, the big games probably like 6 hours, maybe 8. But like I say normal games nowadays are like 4 tops.
Right. Yeah, we play like 3-hour sessions once a week.
Yeah.
Typically.
Yeah.
So the other thought I had in there is another concern game masters have about the whole world building thing is, well, what if I don't know? Right? Then I have to pause the game and figure it out for a minute.
Mm-hmm.
And then, and my answer to that is, well, if you have all of this planned out, where are you keeping it? Right? Is it like printed out in a big 3-ring binder?
Right.
Is it in a collection of Google documents or, some sort of like website that you're using to organize your campaign? And if the players go off the rails and go do something crazy, how long does it take you to go look up the thing for that location?
Right.
Right. So you might have it all planned out, but you're not going to remember it all. So when they go off the rails, you're going to have to take time to go figure out, okay, which document was that city in?
Yeah.
And where was that dungeon?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, here it is. Right. So, I don't know that you're really wasting a lot of time when you have to pause for a minute and be like, hang on a second, let me figure this out. Okay, the NPC's name is this.
Yeah.
Versus, oh, I had a name for that NPC. Hang on a second, let me look it up.
Yeah. I think it would have, I've recently had kind of that type of, not exactly that type of thing, but like I think I told you with, they were going a certain route, my players, and they were like, we're not going this way. We're going to this random cave once upon a time. And I think if I like took the time to plan out and have that cave system there with the creatures put in there and all that stuff ready, like to go, over planning it out and stuff like that, and then not ever using it, I would have felt like that I would have drawn my attention away from other things that actually mattered. Whereas like this thing that they were doing, luckily on the fly, I mean, I used a system where it was easy to do. I was able to make it as they were like RP walking there on the spot, and it worked perfectly. So I was like, oh, I don't have to plan a whole lot of things. I can just, when they want to do this, I can just make it happen on the fly, and plan out the things that actually matter, that are more of the more important beats, instead of like the crazy world building that has a bunch of areas to go to for no reason.
So my point is, don't let the fear of world building or even the desire of world building, like there's some people that love the idea of building an entire continent. More power to you. It's
Yeah.
fun. I've done it. Right. It's great. But don't let that stop you from playing the game.
Yeah.
Right. So, what I say is really the problem of this myth is when people feel like, well, I can't be a DM yet because I haven't finished my world.
Mm-hmm.
Whether that's out of fear or that's out of desire to have a complete world, either way, you're postponing the playing of the game on this idea that you have to world build first.
Yeah.
Um,
I
so that,
even think the opposite is more true of like just have, I mean, we kind of touched on this on the previous thing as well. Just have a town. Like that is the world. Just have a town.
right.
And like I would say if you do plan an entire world, it is actually more I guess just like intimidating for players to be a part of as opposed to something that's growing from the ground level and learning as they go instead of like if you give them a map that has different continents, all these cities, all these things like markers like Skyrim, a player's going to look at it and be like, what the hell? Like, why am I supposed to care about this? How am I supposed to feel about this? As opposed to like, y'all are in a town. There's like a market. There's, a blacksmith. There's all these things. Oh, here's a clue to like a quest that seems like you should be interested in. That's way more digestible as opposed to having so much done. Like I've had campaigns like that where it's like, it's just like, it's over the top, overbearing. And I look at it and I'm like, so why am I supposed to care about this? How am I supposed to care about this? And also like, what am I supposed to even do? Like there's way too much here. I
Right.
just, so I would say it's actually more important to not world build, if anything. Like don't have it.
Yeah. Yeah. I've definitely made that mistake before when I was, when fifth edition first came out and I was looking for a new player group. Um, I kind of put the feelers out there and found a handful of people that were interested in playing. So I sent them all links to this, page I had created online that had the full world build, right? So like it was interactive. They could click on it and oh, I want to learn about this country. Click, and then like a whole like text box would pop
Oh,
up and they could read it
geez.
all. Yeah, like I went way down the rabbit hole.
Yeah.
Um, and none of those people ended up playing. And
Yeah.
I think that was exactly why. I think they looked at it and like, oh, this game is too much for me. I can't, I overwhelmed them
Yeah.
with this thorough world that I had built.
Yeah.
Um,
And
and
like memory wise, like, so I'm combining two of our stories now. If someone has that, and but also did like the gameplay where let's say those worlds were combined, they had all that stuff there, but we went on an adventure trying to find out what happened to the corn. I feel like if they when they leave the session, they're not gonna remember. Oh yes, Jarrell is in alliance with Magmel and they're fighting the Lighthorns. Because the faction of blah blah blah. They were worried about the corn. They were having fun about corn.
right,
It doesn't matter like what you put in there. The more memorable things is what's going to happen in play and what the players do. So
right,
try to just like nurture that aspect. Have the skill sets like we've talked about in the previous episodes about town building and stuff like that and encounter building. Having the simple things laid out and then just re-roll those aspects or have other things in the future and recycle things. But
right.
yeah, I think it's almost important not to world build in that a lot of sense.
Yeah,
Just so people will actually like feel encouraged to play.
yeah, yeah. And the easiest advice I can give a new DM is just make sure at the end of every session, ask your players, well, what do you want to do next?
Yeah.
Right. And then focus your attention between now and next session in building that thing. They say, well, we heard that there's, this thing going on at Farmer Johnson's house. So we want to investigate, to see the mystery of the farm.
Hmm.
All right. So next session, you prep the farm, right? That's all you need to know.
Yeah.
So the next session is your most important thing to world build. Don't get caught up in the rest of it.
True.
I think that's really the takeaway here.
Hmm.
And likewise with all of these myths that we've been talking about, the reason I wanted to talk about these myths is because I feel like they can get in the way of the accessibility to the game.
Yeah.
Like, don't let these things that you've heard or you've read about scare you away from becoming a DM.
Hmm.
Don't worry too much about metagaming. Don't worry too much about world building. Don't worry too much about game balance. Just play and have a good time. And most people, you're gonna figure it out as you go, right?
Yeah.
And you're gonna have crazy stories like we do, of like, I'm not sure how I did it, but I did it and it was fun.
Yeah. But also, like, just have the conversations with your player for sure. Like, I mean, maybe I would say have that session 0 meeting. Maybe you are a person that wants to be the next George R. R. Martin that loves world building, and maybe your players want that too. Maybe there's a weird connection there where it's like that can happen. Sure, go for it. But I'd say generally, probably like 95 or upper percent of the time, it's going to be kind of the ways that we were just talking about, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, communications.
Well, and that was my last campaign. Like I said, I had a general outline of this politically driven campaign. My players showed up and it turned into Muppet Treasure Island. and then the players were having so much fun with it that they said, I've never played a game, to level 20. Like, how long can we keep doing this? And I'm like, we can make this keep going for as long as you guys want.
Mm-hmm.
So, we were, 8 months into it. And so we set or 6 months into it, and we set the goal. Well, let's make it a year. Let's play this campaign for the rest of this year and, see how far we get. And so it went from this goofy Muppet Treasure Island into that epic quest to destroy the hand and eye of Vecna. Because it started off fun and the players didn't want to stop. And they then said, we want to keep going. How long can we take this? Can we take this all the way to level 20?
Awesome.
And so and that's serendipitous. Sometimes that happens. And sometimes you play for 7 sessions and somebody, gets a new job and moves out of the state and everything falls apart and you start a new campaign. I think the best advice is go for it. Just don't worry too much about all this stuff. And I hope we dispelled a lot of the myths so that they don't get in the way and make people overthink and prevent them from becoming the DM that they want to become.
Yeah, for sure.
I think that's the real point. So once again, thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, throw your comments down below. Let us know how wrong we are, how right we are, or how crazy we are.
And what you want us to talk about next. Thanks again for watching. Later.